There is so much foam. So much foam. That's going to be great for some sponge chipping techniques. How's it going on, guys and girls? Welcome back to another episode of Burnt Aquila Painting. My name is Graham and welcome to the channel. Today's video is a little bit special, and the reason for that is because it is brought to you by the guys and girls at Dungeons and Lasers. They have very kindly sent me out some of their products for me to show you guys and to talk a little bit about their 3rd edition Kickstarter, WOODHAVEN. So the first half is going to be showing you what they sent me, how it goes together, my thoughts on it, and the second half is all about painting the 3rd edition set that they've sent me, which is the town sewers. And it's got something a little bit different, so I'm really excited to show you guys. So as you can see, they've sent me this massive box. So this contains stuff from their 1st and 2nd Kickstarter campaigns, which is very, very nice of them. And also some of their stretch goals from those campaigns as well. So if you know already a little bit about Dungeons and Lasers, you know that they do great affordable modular terrain for your tabletop games, and the 3rd edition is no different, and it is no joke. On top of all the houses and terrain, they also do everything that goes inside those buildings. So if you've got a tavern, they've got you covered. A wizard's laboratory, a wizard's laboratory, they've got you covered. They've got all of it: tables, chairs, tankards, spell books, portals, the lot. Now these two are what I'm very excited about: Jakar the dragon and companions. Check these guys out. They don't just do terrain, and you'll see that in the 3rd edition on their Kickstarter, which is live now, that they are starting to do townsfolk, town guards, mayors. You've got tavern waitresses, barkeeps. We're going to save these for another video. The quality of the actual prints are incredible. That is going to be amazing for any dry brushing or anything like that. The days of GW just doing great quality, or you have to buy resin, are long gone. There's so many companies out there these days that are doing incredible work with this injection molded plastic. Also, they do fantasy and sci-fi. So if you're like me and absolutely love 40k, you're covered as well. And as I said, these are completely modular, so absolutely perfect for different encounters and different setups. You're not using the same tavern room for every city that your adventurers go in, or so on and so forth. So as you can see, you've got sci-fi, you've got halls of heroes. It's like a grand hall, kind of dwarven hall kind of aesthetic. You've got the dwarven mines. So they've literally got every scenario you can think of for a game of D&D sorted. Also, Dungeons and Lasers will be getting a 5th edition campaign, so if there's any of you Dungeons and Dragons enthusiasts out there, that will be coming as well. These are all the connecting tabs to that. These are basically the key, the foundation of why the Dungeons and Lasers product is so versatile and so modular. But we'll get into these a bit later. I know one of the things that they are starting to do is roofs now for their modular sets. It is incredible. It's exactly the same stuff with the pins that I showed you just earlier. Go check it out on YouTube. They have a video explaining how they all works. Absolutely awesome. Now, if you guys are wondering where you can find this, all the links to their website and Kickstarter are all down below. And also, if you're thinking, okay, WOODHAVEN, that's cool, I'm not massively into fantasy, but I like the look of that sci-fi set from their 1st campaign, don't worry, you can still pledge for anything on their entire range from both previous campaigns. So as I said, link down below, guys. Go check it out, see if there's something that piques your fancy. I guarantee you will find something for your D&D, Pathfinder, or just tabletop game in general. Now, what they've sent me from their 3rd edition Kickstarter is pretty exciting. And why it's exciting is because of this clear plastic. It sounds so simple, but it is a great idea. Let's open this up and we're going to see what's inside. So what this is the town sewers set from their 3rd edition Kickstarter. And here we go. Look at that. I thought the translucent plastic would be a different feel, I thought it would feel a bit more flimsy, but it does seem to be nice, solid, thick plastic. The same, yeah, same as the wall sections. It's the same stuff, just translucent, which is great. That means it's going to last years on your tabletop games. You've got the same connectors as on the other stuff, so you know exactly how it works. And the wall segments. Just look at the detail on that brickwork. I know you can't feel it, so you'll have to believe me, but when you run your fingers across, it's not just a uniform depth. All these bricks that are sculpted in there are all different levels. It just adds to that texture, that realistic look and feel of the product. Some more of the connectors, little plugs here as well. So just in case, I'm assuming if you don't have any, if you don't want anything to go in a certain wall, like a candelabra or something on there, and then you've got that little hole, you can plug that up. Now they have said that this one they've sent me is the preview version, and any kinks that they have found in this version they have worked out, and the one on Kickstarter that you will be receiving is 100% finish. But if I'm completely honest, I can't find a single fault with this product. There's a couple of mold lines which you get in any plastic miniature on sprue, but apart from that I can't see anything by looking at it wrong with it at all. Now I think that's enough talking. Let's get on to building this town sewer. The first thing that comes to mind when I look at these is I want these stone areas to look like stone, but I want to keep all the water as is. That's the whole point of this clear plastic, that you don't need to paint it. Also, because it's clear, another brilliant idea you could do is raise it off your table slightly and have LEDs underneath it, so you could effectively replicate that shimmer of the water. That would look awesome. And I think I'm going to test my theory that dry brushing on these are going to go really well. So what I'm going to do is dry brush, and I think I'm going to use washes to replicate grime and dirt as well. Right, let's get cracking. So obviously the first thing you have to do is cut it all out of the sprue. So I went sprue by sprue, cut it all out, and cleaning up any of the little mold lines or any of the contact points. The grey plastic was really easy to use, exactly the same stuff as GW or other plastic miniature companies that you've seen before. The see-through plastic was a harder material, and it was quite hard on the clippers. This is a test piece. This is one of the preambles before the main run, and they have resolved any issues, and one of them was a more durable plastic for the see-through pieces, so this is what I'm assuming has been fixed. It still is completely fine to use, it's just a little bit harder than what you would usually expect from a normal miniature on a sprue. The tabs can be quite stiff, but I'd rather have them stiffer going together so I can trim them down and make it easier, or the better contact point if I wanted to glue them. So I see that as a plus. Rather have more plastic than less. A couple of things I would love to see maybe in the future is how they would tackle, say, curved walls. Everything's quite angular with this terrain set, which is not necessarily a bad thing, it still looks great, but I'd love to see how they'll do the same type of modular terrain with the system they have in place, incorporating curved walls, if that's possible. I start by masking off all of the water areas that I don't want to paint. This will help the painting process go a lot faster when I'm throwing paint around, and to keep those clear plastic areas nice and clean. Once that was done, I go around the whole piece with a black primer. This took a couple of goes on the see-through plastic. Even with the black surface primer, if you put it up to the light, you could still see through the painted sections. And if I was to put LEDs underneath it, you would obviously see through the painted stone, which I didn't want. So I gave it a good couple of coats of black primer over the stone surfaces. Once the primer was dry, the first colour I'm going to use is a dark grey. You're not really going to see much of this grey on top of the black, but it's just there laying down the foundation ready for the other colours. If you put that light colour on a really dark colour, it's going to clash and it's not going to have that gradient you want. It's not going to look very realistic. So we start off with a dark grey, dry brushing all of the wall segments and the stone areas on the floors as well. I really like the thought of these being underground, so the light coming from above. Even though in the real world there will be obviously a roof and not much light, I wanted to have a lighter stone at the top of the walls getting darker as it goes towards the bottom, so it just feels like it's underground. With the first layer of dry brushing, I didn't want it too dry. You're aiming to cover up most of the flat surfaces but not the recesses. They're really only the places you don't want to hit with this first layer of dry brushing. So it's more of an overbrush technique, so a wet dry brush. Next we take a slightly lighter grey and I mix it with a pale blue. The reason why I mix it with a pale blue is because I didn't want it just being a flat boring grey. There's quite a lot of grey stone in this paint scheme that I've chosen. I've added a little bit of blue just to break that up and give it a little bit more character. If you look at stone and rocks in real life, they're very rarely just a single grey colour. So by adding those different tones into your rock colour, you immediately get a little bit more of an interesting, slightly realistic looking stone. With this blue-grey mix, I don't dry brush all over like the first layer. This is the first step of getting that light gradient from dark to light. As we do each step of dry brushing, we're getting drier and drier brush. That means taking more and more paint off the brush before we apply it to the miniature. Doing this helps to avoid covering up totally the layer of paint before, and this gives us a bit more of a smooth transition from the darkest point to the lightest point. Having those dark walls with the implication of light coming from above, it just makes it look a bit more dank and dark. With each of these layers we want less and less of the paint on the actual miniature. This is going to create highlights on the edges where we want those highlights on a miniature. Dry brushing is super quick and easy to do, and it's really easy to get great results with not much technical know-how. So you can get your terrain on the table super quick. Each of these steps that I do exactly the same things on the walkway stones on the floor pieces. And because I'm using the same colours, it'll tie in nicely with the walls, but because they're big stone slabs compared to the small brickwork in the walls, you will be able to see some difference, giving it a little bit more character but using the same techniques and colours. All we're doing is using the different sizes and shapes of the sculpt itself. Then on the wall parts, I take a black wash and run a thick line of it above or below any of the protruding stones on the walls, just to give it a little bit more contrast and interest on those walls. So before we get to our final highlights, the one thing I wanted to do is get these dirty. This is a town sewer after all, and I wanted to get them dirty and a little bit more character than just clean stone. So I took several of my washes. I took a sepia wash and a brown wash, and how I do this is I get a little bit of water with a little bit of flow aid or flow improver in it, and I dab that around randomly on the stones and then take different colours and dab them around the stones as well. I primarily used the brown and sepia washes because I was going for more of a dirty tone, and I'd already got the blue tone from the dry brushing in the previous steps. This splodging technique with the water and the different washes, I did exactly the same on the bases of the walls, going up only about a quarter of the way, just so it looks a little bit more grimy and ties in with the stone slabs on the floor sections. Once that was done, I did my final dry brush with an off-white. In this case, I used Terminus stone from GW. It's a really nice warm off-white which goes really well for any stone or gravel. So what I did was a light dry brush over the whole of the walls, a little bit more to the top and a little bit less to the bottom, and I did the same for the stone slabs. The reason why I do my final dry brush all over the whole thing, because it ties in all the areas that we've painted together, so it looks like one whole wall instead of different painted sections. And finally we get to peel off that tape. This is the bit I've been looking forward to for this whole project, to reveal that water effect with the see-through plastic compared to the painted stones, and I am super happy with how this came out. At first, when I was priming them, I was a bit worried that you'd be able to see through the stone still, with the nature of acrylic paints being quite translucent, but I think it came out really nicely, and the use of that clear plastic gives it a really cool effect without having to deal with any resins pouring into gaps or anything like that. It's ready to go straight out of the box. And last but not least, I wanted to add a little bit of character to the stones in the water as well. So I painted them grey, highlighted them with a lighter grey, and then put a little bit of brown wash around where they meet the see-through plastic. This being a sewer, I thought, what's a sewer without having a little bit of foliage, a little bit of the natural growing down there. So what I did was I took a couple of grass tufts, cut them up in small bits and super glued them around the edges of the stone slabs. This gives it a little bit more of a contrast from the grey, but also makes it look a little bit more alive and lived in. I also painted all the bars on the grates on the walls with typhus corrosion. What typhus corrosion is a technical paint from GW which has a little bit of grit in it. So once dry, it gives a really good rusty look. And I just dry brushed a little bit of silver and then dry brushed a little bit of bright orange on there to make it like a good rusty metal. I also dry brushed a little bit of brown on the water effects, so it didn't have that sharp edge between the stone and the water, giving a little bit more of a softer, gradual feel up to the stone. Once that was done, I gave the watery parts a gloss varnish around where I did the brown wash on the water effects, as well as around the edges of the stone slabs, just to keep that shininess where it would be wet. And once that gloss varnish was dry, the piece was done. This is how it came out. I am really happy with how this came out and how easy it was to actually paint. The way these pieces go together is really intuitive. It's just little tabs that fit on the underside into little slots, and they just snap together and just hold it fast. And it really is, it really is pretty stable. You're not gonna break it just by knocking it on your table. It's not going to come apart. I had so much fun painting this piece. I think the quality of the product is top notch. The concept of the see-through plastic for the water effects is a great idea, and how they've implemented it comes across really nicely and really easily in your painting as well as on the table. The amount of attention to detail really comes across in the final product and is well worth having a look at their other products on their Kickstarter. So go have a look, the links are down below, and thank you to Dungeons and Lasers for sponsoring this video. So that is me for another video, guys. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and let me know what you think of this video down in the comments. As I said before, guys and girls, I do have a Patreon if you want to support the channel. You've probably heard the whole spiel on other channels, but there's 2 tiers you can join in at, and access to the Burnt Quill Art Painting Discord. So if you do want to support the channel, that is the best way to do it. Otherwise, if you like what I'm doing here at Burnt Quill Art Painting, give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I produce. And until next time, peace! Yeah.